You look well rested, Jim.
I've just got my my pre shot of digital health nap in. I'm ready
Isn't
to
it
go.
amazing? These days, last week, Marina and I actually disconnected for like 2 days, and we're like, "Oh my God, wow, that felt so good." And
Yeah.
actually
And
today,
are you guys disconnecting for this break we're in?
so tomorrow we're gonna disconnect. Today we still had our 2021 Your Coach Health Planning meeting with the
Oh wow.
team, so just kind of hit the ground running. But yeah, it's been a crazy year. But you know what? Since this is our kind of New Year's celebration, you and I,
Yep,
um,
absolutely. I get some dingle gin here.
nice. You're ginning and I am Glenfiddiching.
Glenn finishing. I like it. I like it.
Um, yeah, and I'm actually super grateful to Michelle. Right, we asked her on the last episode if we should do this today or not, or just give it a break a little.
Right. Right.
So
Give ourselves a little week off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she kind of, I don't know, like I felt a little ashamed because like, well, why break such a streak if we did it every week? And
Right. She kind
actually,
of guilted us into it.
I
You've gone this far. Why not do the last week? Right.
and I counted, I could have been wrong, but I just kind of went by, and this includes two awesome people from Health Beacon as well. But we had 36 guests plus our better halves, so 38 guests this year. And again, Jim Joyce. That's what everybody wants me to start. I've gotten feedback like, you got to start with Jim Joyce. It's Wednesday. So
it's a good name for that. My wife calls it doing the Jim Joyce, kind of the, hey, Jim Joyce.
So first of all, cheers.
Cheers to you on a successful 2020 pandemic year. Maybe we never live another.
Yeah, another week, another vaccine, right? Approved. So that's also great news.
Yep.
At least in UK, I think.
Yeah. We've got the AstraZeneca. We're kind of guiding the world through this whole survival. I think when I was thinking about, you were talking about, well, we're going to kind of wrap up, there's a lot of podcasts and they're doing their year-end wrap-ups, but actually thinking back on what you're saying about Michelle, and she was talking about the consistency, right? Like she seems like she was a coach, like Michelle Longmire from Medical.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about her sports, and we had a lot of people in the consistency, right?
Yeah.
So your thought on consistency in managing mental health.
Man, so I think again, and I've said this a couple of times, when we sort of packed our bags from Berlin very quickly to come to US, I think you sort of felt me, like we were, quarantined at Marina's uncle's house, and it was just going through the funding round, almost collapsed as this thing hit, right? I was in a shitty place, really, right? And I loved your kind of text or call, or I don't remember, like, let's do this, we've been talking about this. So I think this consistency that you and I have had, week to week, it's there's many things to look forward to, but it's obviously a key component of that week. And knowing that you and I will BS a bit, and some days have a drink, and have guests, right? Like it'd be awesome.
Sebastiano brought my card in.
Okay, awesome. Just for us two, all right. Actually, I said 38 guests. Yeah, we actually had some of our kids. Not everybody wanted to show their faces and show up. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, but I think the consistency though is really interesting, because I found it too. Like I'm, probably like you, quite motivated and quite go at it, but I actually find that the consistency of having like, hey, okay, listen, we're going to have a predictable, positive conversation twice a week, right?
Yep.
It's like no one's going to be giving you a hard time, and it's going to, attempt to be productive, but not at the cost of having fun. Having a positive.
Fun must be included, for sure.
Right.
But I mean, I think also, actually, just remember this year 2020 continuing on the mental health. So again, thanks for dragging me out, and I think that personally helped me a lot. And then Marco, Mohwinckel tagged me, if you remember, and then I guess everybody who I tagged were cursing me out. But I honestly, those 25 push-ups, 25 days to raise
Right.
awareness for mental health disorders. Just from my own personal well-being, it helped me. But
Right.
B, I saw you doing them on Facebook, I
Right.
think, and others and other places. So it was
Yeah.
consistency again, right? It's 25 days, 25 push-ups, consistency. I
Right.
was trying to do 30 for 30 and then 40 to 40, but I dropped off. I'll be frank with you.
Right. Right.
Steve Seuntjens is gonna bust my chops because he was pushing me to keep doing 30 for 30, and I was doing them for a while.
Yeah, and Steve was doing them with you too, right? Like, see, when you
Yeah,
stayed,
yeah,
you guys. Yeah, no, that was interesting too, because I think I know we want to do a little bit of reflection on this, on the reason for Shot of Digital Health was around helping people with how do you mentally get through this time, right? Or how do you get through any time that's kind of tricky, right? And the push-ups were interesting because that was also like, so it was a little bit of a public commitment, like a transparent public commitment. You're going to go
yeah,
on there, and not every day you're going to feel like Superman and racking out 25 push-ups, but it's doable, right? It's doable, it's predictable.
yeah.
And you're doing it and you get a little bit of credit for it publicly. You feel like you're investing in your health.
I also
Um,
got shit for it from people saying that I don't do them properly, and of course they're the ones that would get tagged next day. So,
right. Yeah. But I think that's actually for me, if I look back on the kind of learnings from the mental health, like that consistency and, and then in not taking it, even if you're a positive person and you're not taking your mental health for granted, right? Like it's kind of like mental health in this whole issue of digital health and its
yeah.
application in mental health and not taking it for granted, right? Just because you're
I
positive
mean,
one.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, positive or not, extroverted or introverted does not prevent mental health challenges, right? And
Right.
other neurological impacts. So I
Right.
think it's super important for overall brain health, right?
Right.
And it's been and actually, I met this awesome guy, Joshua Haynes. He's a partner at a mental wellness impact fund, Masawa,
Okay.
Masawa dot fund, actually.
Masawa.
And I did reach out just before this because they've gathered some interesting statistics, and I'm not going to read them all, but I'll just kind of fly through because, I think, you can hold up the C19 sign, brought into light all of the challenges and issues we've had as a society, specifically around mental health, right? I actually, I mean, not to mention a lot of the comorbidities, and brought kind of health and wellness back onto, I think, some of the agendas, both for employer perspective, et cetera. But just to give you, I mean, this is a crazy stat. I mean, it's from 2018. Does everyone receive the treatment they need? For example, there are huge treatment gaps, right? And one of the stats is in Africa, and this is UCT out of 2018. There's over 90% treatment gap just in Africa alone, right?
Okay.
Who is impacted? I mean, 1 in 7 people globally. I mean, it's crazy, right? Like you
One in
count
seven
seven
people.
people, 1 in 7 people globally. So 11 to 18% have one or more mental or substance use disorders. I mean,
Wow.
these numbers are just absolutely insane. So do check out Masawa. Yeah, I'll have to ask Joshua how to how to pronounce it. Masawa, I think, .fund
Yeah.
/statistics, and there's a bunch of stuff. They also gathered super interesting. I guess they link to it's over like 11 to 1,200 startups in mental health space. So interesting to watch. And
A broad range of
they've done it.
startups, not just digital. Well, all with a digital component or.
I mean, I don't know what startup today does not have a digital component. I'd be actually
Right.
curious to find
Right.
out. If anybody from the audience knows,
Right.
I would love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, very broad range. I mean, from some neurodiagnostics to kind of mental health, more typical kind of behavioral health and therapies, et cetera.
Yeah.
So
You know what stuck with
um,
me? You know what stuck with me when you were talking about the inbound that's coming with health coach, and it just stuck with me when you talked about the people that were reaching out to get access to kind of like health coaching services, and they were like, people with really, really heavy kind of mental health, kind of combined
yep,
with obesity and these real kind of heart jerking, use cases where like, hey, I need help, and how that's
Yeah, I
so
mean,
intertwined with your own business.
yeah, I mean, just for our viewers and listeners, because I'm not sure, we've decided, I mean, as a young company, we decided to do a little bit of an experiment just a few months ago, more to test the waters, because while our company is for coaches to manage their business, we're experimenting with a number of models, and one of them we now just put out, like, I'm a coach, so I can go and create my practice program, or I need a coach. We're not putting one penny of advertising, no SEO for consumers. We now have close to 500 requests. And this is
Wow.
back to some of the statistics. I mean, it's insane. We've seen about 40% are around behavior and mental health
Right.
issues. But
Right.
interestingly enough, again, people are looking at it like, how do I reach my goals? How do I stay consistent? The other
Right.
30 or 40 is around kind of weight management. And there's a long tail. Gut health is up there. So the gut brain connection, I think people
Wow.
are doing more research and recognizing that. So super fascinating to see. I mean, on one side, again, C19, I think pushed quite a lot of us to develop new habits, right?
Right. Right.
Including consistency in our podcasting, right? But I know,
Yeah.
we've had, the 36, 38 guests, and I know in some of them we've asked the question, like, how are you handling and how dealing with it? Like,
Right.
what's your recollection? To be honest, I don't, until we come up with our book.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think the fact that this started off as a theme, and you talked about, hey, me being kind of a little bit of a positive voice and say, hey, let's try something, a bit fun, and hey, listen, if it's not fun, we'll stop it, right? And or if it's not, if we don't feel good about it. And then the same thing for me. I remember going through, I don't know what I was going through, but I remember, there was some moment, and maybe it was the funding round. I can't even remember the detail, but I remember really dragging myself into the show. And then it was like, but then it was like a bit like a drug. It was like, hey, I was back on. I was performing again.
It's like back on stage.
Back on stage. Look, it's all about me. Yeah. But so I remember you pulling me back out later on, and I think we talked about that. It's like that was a reoccurring theme. So each of the guests, I think, when I look back at the guests, I think we had like Lisa on at the beginning, and I remember feeling her anxiety, in California was going into lockdown.
Yep.
And I remember feeling that, and her talking about that. And, and so I was reflecting, and then, then we went to Rob, and I think Rob was one of the first ones that was really calling it out, saying, hey, hey, is this COVID, sorry, I'll put the sign up again. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for digital health companies? And he's like, it's a net positive, man, but this underlying mental health issue. So he was kind of really flagging this as like, this is going to be a massive trend. It was kind of obvious to everyone, but he was articulating it the way he does. And then, then we had Kristen Milburn, and I mean, I won't hit all of them, but like, I think Kristen, we said, let's bring in some music here. Right. And I think, we had John Brownlee, who talked about
music and ayahuasca.
Yeah, and music and ayahuasca. So we were trying to have her take us to Peru, take us through the whole ayahuasca experience, tripping out, and what she's doing. So she seemed really connected with that, right? The breathing exercises, the use of music to affect it. We talked in one of the podcasts, and we brought John Brownlee on later on.
That's right.
And he was talking about the impact of an Andrea Bocelli song, right at, to kind of
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like, there was this kind of music theme happening. And, my other, I kind of was putting down some notes. I thought like Bill Taranto, when he had him on, he just said something to me like, I'm like, hey, Billy, because he looked quite good. I'm like, you look fit, you look good. He was by his pool. He's like, yeah, I'm doing lots of exercise, and I'm, not traveling as much. And so, and, but then he immediately went in, hey, listen, I have a personal goal to not get hooked up to a ventilator. I don't remember him saying, he said something like that. That kind of
something around that. Yeah. But I remember him also
that.
saying like some of those habits, because lots of travel and eating out and all of that, actually helped him. Right. So again, it depends on sort of how you as an individual interpret that situation for yourself and what you do about it. Right.
Right.
I mean, joke around with Marina, but it's like, is this kickoff to my media career, right? I mean, which, by the way, so tomorrow my break is actually going to be reviewing and re-listening. So unlike this, where I just put this stuff up right after this, the podcast that I'm cheating on you with Mr. Kendall. Yeah, we I recorded already, I think 8 episodes, but there's quite a lot, just re-listening to it and all of that. So, but anyway, the reason I'm saying, like, I'm also trying to stay consistent and still, kind of 1,000% of the time is spent with your coach, but then I need sort of other parts of my brain, right? Doing some of his, I wouldn't say more
kind of
creative.
feeding each other. I think that's really interesting. I remember, like, by the way, I listened to it came up on my podcast, you and Dan talking about the Digital Therapeutics podcast. So I just listened to it.
Dan actually, okay, I'll ping him. I think he was pinging me something that he was going to pump it out there.
So I just listened to it. So one of my mental health tricks is I do this ice swimming. Remember, so I was actually, I was biking out. I was going to meet Martin Kelly out at the 40 foot in Dublin, and we were jumping into 7.4 degree water.
Wow.
Yeah, minus or whatever, -1 outside.
Minus.
And it was freaking freezing. But so we jumped in. We were kind of, but anyways, on the way out, I was listening to your podcast with Dan, and I actually thought that was one of the best conversations I've heard you do. So I thought your flow with Dan and actually him as well, like you guys kind of actually interplayed rightly, and you described the digital therapeutic space, what you're doing. Thought it was really smooth.
Awesome. Thank you. It's funny. And I remember doing the podcast with him where we would just record voice, right? So it would be, I forget what tool he was using, etc. And we actually did this over Zoom. So he, because the dynamic, like, to me, I can't imagine doing a podcast. So everybody who I'm recording with now, right, is I'm actually asking them to do video also. So, look nice just in case we want to use it. But I can't imagine just talking on the phone without a video and recording it. But anyway, I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great, and I'm really excited about that. And you were, and I thought it was interesting. We're kind of rambling the conversation here, but I thought it was interesting how breaking down these digital therapeutics, and it's fundamentally about cognitive behavior, and how do you unpack, like, what's the real impact to the consumer, to the people buying these things, like what's the role, because digital health therapeutics is going to drag the consumer into the decision and the impact, and because that's what it's all about, right? Like, how do you improve the interaction?
Honestly, I mean, my 2 cents on it, and of course, as I interview more and more leaders in the space, I think I'll get more data points. And I think I mentioned, I'm not a practitioner, and this is why it's actually interested me, because I've been fascinated by it. But I think my quick small prediction for 21 is that we'll actually see much more of that separation on prescription digital therapeutic and companies taking their own market access route, and others that are not still using, it's not a negative term, but cuddling more with pharma, right? And then, as Brian Dolan, who's actually working with me on this podcast, I'm pretty excited about that. We're always going to have a journalistic view of, or journalistic question from Brian, and I'll use his research where available. So we do no research, you and I, but I kind of have to do it. So I think the third one, he kind of looks at it also as, employer market. So, kind of the channel that you enter as well. So there's ways to dissect. By my short prediction on this is we'll see sort of the companies that are making their own path with pure prescription digital therapeutic will just go fast ahead. That's my.
Oh, you think the prescription is going to outplay the consumer led?
No, I'm saying the prescription, the speed of those companies that are going their own market access versus the ones that are cuddling with pharma and a drug, right, or particular molecular therapy will go much faster.
100%.
I mean, it's just.
I'll back you up in that prediction, man. 100%. Like, and I'm really reflecting on that a lot too. In my own company, and we're looking to probably do some type of consumerization of our own offering in 2021, and largely because of that, because we see the consumers are kind of almost like begging for the technology but we have to spend all this time convincing, big healthcare systems or pharmaceutical companies to adopt it as a system solution. And that decision's so slow.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
Whereas
exactly.
the consumer saying, "Hey, I need it. Let me get it. I'll pay for it, or I'll lobby my insurance companies, or I'll ask my doctor for it."
I mean,
But
if
yeah,
I rewind back when you were just starting the company, I mean, honestly, I still remember that moment where the excited Jim Joyce runs over. This was a Health 2.0. I forget the location in London, and you're like pulling up. Let me show you this PDF, the mock-up, and I'm like, wow, this is like an Apple for syringes, right? Like,
right,
I mean, I don't know, like that's how I think I
right,
called, right? I mean, it was beautiful interface even as a concept of it. So
right,
when you were starting company, you thought of consumer first.
right,
Yes, your
hundred
channel is
percent.
not, but
Yeah. No, so we have something exciting planned on that side, but I think that's definitely, I'm fascinated by that, and I'm also fascinated. Like, I'm going to listen to your podcast. I'm fascinated by the interplay, right? Like this idea that they can't necessarily live. Like, if you think about it, like I was listening to one podcast, was his name Tim Ferriss, and he was talking about how to get, he built his company up in like vitamins, or a vitamins company originally, and he would say the classic move would be, you would go, if you created a new vitamin, you would go get consumer acceptance by doing direct selling on your website, and then once you got that, you would go to Trader Joe's, or you would go somewhere else, and you
yeah,
wonder if these companies that are going to first running into the big sophisticated pharmaceutical healthcare systems, but not having the consumer adoption of the tech and the consumer buy-in on that, means that they don't have anything to bargain with in those big companies, right?
yeah.
Like, they don't have, can they live together, right?
Yeah, I think honestly, I know we've been saying like every year is a defining year for digital health, but like, I mean, to me, the consumer piece, and I think majority of the world waking up to digital tools,
Yeah,
every morning. And to me, that's not a prediction anymore, right? It's just a given.
right,
And the question is, does it stick? And actually, I mean, the other aspect, right? Like, I think over the course of this year, the whole sort of primary care, telemedicine, where does that, or just I guess clinics, right? Like the minute clinics, that's all
right,
sort of merging together with, I actually think, some more self-care, right? Because I think there is more realization that
right,
maybe there's not enough beds in the hospital anymore, or maybe there's not
right,
enough doctors to
right,
see you, right? So I think that's what I just saw a picture was posted. I think Shafi posted in London. There's a queue of 60 plus ambulances into the ER room. I didn't see which hospital it is. So
right,
just think about that. So the whole
right,
primary care, virtual care, telecare, and neighborhood care will, I
right.
think, it's going to be interesting play, like Iora Health, One Medical, and Teladoc, right? Or
Right.
Amwell. I think we'll see either more consolidation / partnerships.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do we want to move into predictions? Do we want to move predictions off of mental health, or just flow with it?
Yeah, I mean, just flow with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I was thinking about, because actually I was saying, I did a little bit of preparation, probably because I have so much time. I'm taking a proper break right now, like over the
Good for
last
you.
week.
Good for you.
But yeah, I think predictions. I was thinking about predictions. I think it's going to be a hard one to call next year, in terms of, I was thinking about this thematic of like infrastructure versus experience. Like, how that we now have, what happened in 2020. We now have all these capital market, these funding opportunities that didn't exist before. When I think about when I was funding Health Beacon originally, they would say, "Jim, tell me who the 3 or 4 acquisition targets are for Health Beacon." And to be honest with you, it was kind of a little bit of a guess, right? Like, we had there's people that sell into pharmaceuticals, and we have approach there. There's people that are in the, injection device manufacturers. And then we'd have other people that reach out to us. And so we were like, it was almost, the list was too big and wasn't scoped in. And then now we have, SPACs coming into the healthcare system and consolidating, creating big companies. We have material acquisitions. We've had companies that have gone public, and we
Yeah.
still have the private markets funding these things, but they have these these acquisition opportunities here. So it just feels like, I guess, like speed, right? Is like, that's how I would describe it, meaning there's going to be more, it's going to be a year of deal making is my thought.
Oh yeah. We haven't seen, I don't think I think we're going to see another couple of dozen SPACs next year, just in health or digital health or health care. But I think my longer term, and I know you and I chatted kind of about this, but my longer term, I mean, it's hard enough to integrate companies, when they know their business model, they're executing on it, and it's mainly around culture, right? Those are the big ones. These are mostly young companies. I mean, again, right? We had Jamie Edwards on, right, as part of the UpHealth SPAC. I mean, combined, they're doing about 100 million, which is not insignificant, but it's still, each one of them are young companies, right, with their own sort of, feel, and they're still figuring out, each one of them, the pricing. So the concept is great. The question becomes, to me, as we see more of these SPACs and more rolling up, like, are we drying it up? Because I mean, I would venture to say there's great companies out there, but when you put them together, that integration culture, who's the CEO? I think we're going to see a high failure rate.
When I was looking back through this, through the year, and I was thinking, we asked Francesca the question, is the fun over? In digital health. Kara, I don't remember that.
I remember that. Yeah.
We asked her, was the fun over? And she kind of said, I hope so. I hope the suits, come in and start to kind of take this stuff seriously. The big systems start to kind of adopt it. Because we're thinking about how much fun we have as kind of innovators in digital health and going to conferences, and she's like, I hope it's fun over, but then I hope the suits kind of shed their shoots and wear, don't hate meditate t-shirts. And this is her. I just listened to her a few minutes ago.
Hey, I have one of those.
Yeah, that's probably from you. Yeah, from you. So next year is like, if you think about, for those SPACs to go well, they have to have really sophisticated, professionalized management systems, right? Like, it's kind of, where they're making hard decisions about how to knit these companies together, how to integrate them, which is very different than, meeting Jim Joyce at a conference and exciting you about what Health Beacon could do, right? Like, that's a very different skill set. That's a different type of manager.
Absolutely. And I think they'll get there. My only thing is, there's just we won't see it next year. I think next year will be a lot more excitement about these SPACs, right? And I mean, there's still a lot of liquidity in the overall market, right? And so I think it's yet another vehicle. But I think, let's fast forward 3-4 years. I mean, I don't know the stats on M&A and mergers specifically. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I think, but the fun is never over. That's my comment a bit, right? Because, I mean, just when you think you're done innovating, there's, I just saw a stat somewhere today. I think Maneesh sent it to me, like an excerpt. Globally, there's been more new company registrations than I think ever before or something. I don't want to, I'll look up the stat, but it was amazing. Like, I think US alone, 86%. Let me, it was
in total company registrations.
So I'm going to read this real quick. The coronavirus pandemic has triggered a surge in number of businesses being set up in many of the world's largest economies. And I'll skip over. US, UK, France, Germany, and Japan have all logged substantial increases in new company registrations in just recent months alone, despite the severe blow. In US, business formation applications were up 82% in 3 months to September, compared with the same quarter the previous year. So entrepreneur spirit is alive and well, and I actually think we're going to see more fun and more, hard, the school of hard knocks, right?
Hard miles,
a lot of, So
yeah. But if I get specific, just so that we can go back and look at this podcast in December 30th of 2021, and we look back, my prediction specifically will be more funding. So the funding, whatever funding went in 2020, which was one of the best years, it'll be higher. So that's going to be up. The deal making, more deal making. You said more public companies. I'll go with you on the more SPACs. So I think we're going to see more deals. more acquisitions, because that was really 2020 was the first year that we saw, the end of 2019, the first deals got out of the gates, the Livongos and the Health Catalysts, and I can't think of the other one. And then boom, 2020, we saw things like, you would see things like Up Health and this, some of these other interesting deals. So I think we're going to skate right into it. And a lot of this funding is going to shift. It's like tech funding is going to shift to healthcare, and so you're going to see these big companies, Apple making a play in healthcare, Amazon making a play in healthcare. I mean, they are. Google making a play in healthcare, and Microsoft in bigger, more material ways to their own companies. So that's going to just change the whole dynamic, right? Like the dynamic's going to be flailing.
I fully agree. I think the whole, I know we've been talking about digital health, but I think the biotech, so, the Modernas and BioNTech, right, the Pfizer, I think brought a whole new level, right, of a platform. I mean, if you think about what those two vaccines are, they're basically code that is injected in you. I mean, I'm no expert, right? I actually listened to a great A16Z, Chris Hogg recommended it on Twitter.
Love that
podcast.
One.
That was great. That was fantastic with the Moderna.
Like they built
CEO.
The vaccine in like 72 hours or something like that.
In 48 hours,
48 hours
after receiving the DNA sequence. Yeah, I mean, it's all over software. So, but I think while it's for vaccine and the mRNA technology has been out there, right, and forgotten. Right. I mean, again, I learned that a lot of that in the podcast. I think we're going to see more innovation in that space for oncology, right? As an example,
right?
So,
right.
Yeah.
In the stage that
and I'm going to just give, because he wanted a trifecta, Craig Lipset. So I think maybe in early next year we'll have him on to talk about more in the clinical trials
100%
as well. Yeah. So shout out to you, Craig.
Trifecta. Yeah, Craig. The other person we have to get on here is Jeff Berkowitz too.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. I reconnected with him after years back from Metco / Walgreens days. So that's crazy.
Right. He's one of our loyal listeners, and I found out he's sitting on the board of a major Irish company here, which
I saw that.
But I think that that whole that role that the pharmaceutical companies played in 2020, like, so their stocks are just they're just, people just see, societally, they're just so important right now. So any of the kind of the bad news bears around pricing, kind of attitudes and that stuff is kind of abated, right, in some ways, because, and then 2021, we're going to be living with this for the first half of the year. So, so they're going to have, I think the role that pharma plays is just going to become more and more important. And that's not going to start to claw back until the end of the year, 2022, I'd say.
So to follow your thing, your comment, if we're watching this again, so my prediction, we will see a much larger pipeline in the biotech space next year.
Okay. Yeah.
Much
bigger
larger.
Pipeline of these kind of mRNA style, the capacity to create new compounds really quickly and code them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then while we talked about SPAC, I also want to talk about APAC, right? Because that's my other prediction, that I think while APAC has been, lots of activities, right? I mean, if you think about, Ping An Doctor, just as an example, I think they hit over 300 million this year, right? I think just because a lot of the APAC countries came, at least parts of it, right, came out much quicker out of this. I mean, to perfect example, I think either digital health or telemedicine was actually illegal in South Korea, as an example, up until now, right? And we think of South Korea as one of probably most wired countries, right? And so think about the unleashing of innovation that just happened as well.
Right.
So I think we're going to spring ahead, and I think APAC will actually go much quicker, faster, and leapfrog, just because of necessity.
So let's talk a little bit of like maybe downside predictions here a little bit too. I think that
there's no downsides, dude. No
No
downside.
downside.
No.
Or chat opportunities.
Yes.
So the the early stage, so companies entering the market, so digital health tech entering the system right now is going to have to face, is going to have a higher cost of entry, in my opinion. So, the requirement to meet, HIPAA and data standards, and even just the sheer competition that already exists in the market, in terms of other technology platforms that might be doing something similar. So the type of startups that will get initiated, I think, will be from very experienced players. So you're going to see this kind of move towards kind of experienced entrepreneurs, almost like the med tech sector.
Yeah, I don't disagree, right? And I think we've started to see that already. I mean, I remember, if I put my old hat on, prior to this January, we were looking for teams like, one person, geek in the garage was no longer enough, right? Like, it needed to be a, cross expertise team. And so I think the market has matured over the last decade. And I think this year brought it, back to kind of your comment, is the fun over? No, I don't think it's over. But, I mean, to be concrete, I do still, there's going to be tons and tons of young companies and young startups, right? But I think the age will be, by who it was started, will be much more experienced entrepreneurs. Maybe I'm just saying it because I went back into entrepreneurship, as a recovering executive again. So,
But I think there's an interesting opportunity for people, which is that what you didn't have in the past, like you, Marina, doing health coach, you couldn't have gone and worked for a company that does what you do, or some analogous company. Like, I couldn't have, like, there weren't big companies that were doing like what I do. So if I was a young person, entering into that space, and my ability to kind of, like, in Silicon Valley, it's like, I'm going to go work for a Google or an Amazon or a Facebook or whatever the other 100 tech startups, Salesforce, learn something from them, and then go start my own company. So I think you're going to have this cadre of maybe, 10 kind of top tier digital health tech companies that young entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs can go work for.
So, Jim, let's, how there's the PayPal mafia, they said, like, there'll be a health beacon and your coach mafia coming out, right? Like, exactly. all the youngins, I know I've introduced you to a bunch, and vice versa. Talent, just amazing talents all around the world that are knocking on our door, because of the show. I have no idea, but want to work with us, right? And build something together. And it's just
like, I have, like, in my team, I have people that totally, after 3, 4, or 5 years working inside Health Beacon, will be, I mean, they could go earlier, maybe, I won't stop them, but, like, they totally could have the skills, but they'll learn a lot from, the challenges, that we've kind of, like, how we've approached access to market, and, access, just the sheer challenges of getting a product, a digital health tech product into the market.
Listen, to each his own, right? Like, I mean, I still, I'm going to rewind all the way back, but, like, leaving out of college, I had an awesome job offer from Deloitte and Touche at the time, right? And I'm like, I don't want to be filing papers in a cabinet all day, right? At the time, like, so I went to a startup, right? And there I had an opportunity to switch 24 hats a day, right? And so. But again, right, it's not for everyone, but there's also tremendous talents that I'm just, like, looking forward to scaling your coach to work with, like, awesome people. We had our ugly sweater holiday party yesterday, so we just had our team. So I had my tie there.
Awesome.
What else?
Let's go prediction on globalization. So I think I'm wondering, and I don't have the answer to this one, so I'll ask you, so we have, like, how digital health kind of starts to think about, like, if we think, like, how we know each other, we've kind of got this global cadre of executives that kind of move around the world. Like, they move into the US as much as they move into Europe and, other parts of the world. Like, will digital health companies, really, to date, haven't really been multi-jurisdictional, right? Like, it's been, the success is, like, either the US or one market plus the US. Will we see that change in 21?
Uh, so I think my short answer is no, actually. I think there'll be so to your point, a European company entering US or US trying to enter Europe, probably, everybody's eyes is in
Germany,
Germany because of DIGA.
right?
I think expanding out, like, some of the like companies like Iora Health in US, I mean, it's not easily translatable, that model, to almost
Right,
any European country, right? So just as an
right,
example, and those are the bigger guys, right?
right.
I personally don't think they'll be like, we're going to all of a sudden see these digital health companies going, in 3 or 4 markets, including APAC.
Right.
There'll be some like, Wellthy Therapeutics that I'm pretty sure they're already doing outside of APAC, so in Europe, and I'm sure they'll be
Yeah.
doing some more stuff in US, right? So
Right.
there'll be some, but I don't see it like, like mushrooms
Everywhere.
blooming.
Maybe it's like the remote monitoring companies, like that. They might have more of an option, that where it's more kind of device centric. Like, because like I say, like with Health Weekend, like we operate in a lot of countries, that you could imagine that if you have some tool that kind of follows some traditional pathway, it can get out to more markets. But yeah, I
I
agree.
I I think it'll be. I mean, maybe this is going to be up to the SPACs, right, to sort of pick I'll call
Yeah.
them the best or the leading companies in those spaces and put them together for multi-market coverage, right?
Right.
If you look at Bioformis, born in Singapore, right? They've had
Right.
an acquisition in Europe. They're now, they're expanding
Yeah.
into US. So, but again, I don't remember how long Bioformis has been around, but at least
Like
at
four
least
years.
five.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say
Five,
five
6 years.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Probably.
so that level of maturity is just a normal thing, right?
Right.
I'm actually curious to see, and my prediction, we actually won't see it, but like the Teladoc Livongo merger, and to see the fruits of its labor from a Livongo perspective. So Teladoc is already, here in Europe, right?
Right.
I don't see the Livongo model plugging right in easily, right? Both
No.
from certification perspective and everything else. So I don't see the European expansion, even for such large players, right, that are merged together.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like anything. It takes focus, and it takes market expertise, and it takes investment. And if the
Yeah.
payoff is bigger in the domestic, like if you're scratching 1-2% of the diabetes market in the U.S., the question is why go to Sweden, or why go to Netherlands, or why
Yep.
go. So you can maybe make the case for Germany, possibly the UK, maybe another market there, but unless you're just going to adopt the tech wholesale, which most systems don't yet know how to do, then it's just
Yeah.
not worth the
No.
company's time.
Exactly.
So international arbitrage will remain very viable, really, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll side with you on this one.
Yeah.
One I don't know, one other one that just jumps into my mind, because you mentioned remote monitoring and chronic disease management obviously is part of it. I think the whole going from like inactive aging to active aging, and I think those type of individuals in that age group are realizing, again, I'll just raise the sign already, but realizing that staying active, so I think we're going to see actually a lot of innovation in that space popping
Aging.
up, and that's where we're going to see actually quite a lot of startups entering in.
100%, because it's a problem. And if you think about even my comment about the people that are starting this company, they might look more like me and you, right? Like our age wise, hopefully they'll look very diverse in terms of
Yep.
their backgrounds and ethnicity,
Oh,
but they won't be 25-year-old kids that think they're invincible. They'll be like 50-year-old people in a midlife crisis, right?
I wonder who you're describing.
Yeah, me for the last 10 years. But so what I think this active aging actually, and that was one of Rob Garber's area of interest from Seven Wire, was aging. If you go back to originally, he's like, I think there's going to be a big play in aging. And if you think about the people starting the companies, you kind of build companies that resonate with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So, but I
absolutely.
mean, the aging space is just, this whole idea, like you were talking about, like, the people that, people talking about gut health and exercise and, the capacity for new therapeutics to impact you in different ways. That's going to be a wide open area.
I'll tell you, we added, we have sort of categories for health coaches as they register. We added active aging, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Right.
And, coaches can actually sort of tag themselves if they're helping with a particular topic. I think
Yeah.
close to 15 to 20% of coaches added active aging to their sort of specialty, for lack of a better term.
Right. It makes sense, right? Because they
Yep.
have people have capital, money, they're motivated, they're trying to figure it out. And like I think my parents' generation, they didn't feel the pressure. Like you didn't feel the pressure to, they just didn't know. I don't know if they knew, thinking about their
Right.
health in a different way, right? Like just wasn't even tools or the philosophy
Exactly.
of
What else, man? Maybe, like we've been chatting for like 45 minutes already. I thought we were going to do like a short 20-minute, hey,
that. Okay.
let's just put, make sure that we stay consistent. But
I got loads of, comments here. Oh yeah. Yeah. So this is, I'll take this, I'll give this credit to Melinda, Melinda that was on
yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
But she was talking, she made the comment that, hey, the extroverts are not okay. That's what
Yes.
she the extroverts are not okay. And I thought she, I think it's in 2021 is going to be the return of the smile, right? Like, so I think we're out of mass in, I mean, masks will still be used when you're in a confined setting, but
Yep.
I think we will see the mitigation of mass kind of in the back half of 21. I think it's an easy prediction to make. And the smile will be back, right?
Either that or see-through masks. So,
yeah, it could be see-through masks.
it could be see-through masks, but I am starting to get invites for conferences for like September, October already next year. I think actually, isn't Marty Health Excel also sometime in the fall?
He's
They're
got something
hoping,
booked for
planning.
September. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got
Okay.
a great location here booked. That hopefully, and that's September, so that sounds really possible, right?
I'm in.
Yeah. I think I probably hit a lot of my predictions here. I thought going back to this other stuff, was when we talk about your mental health or whatever. I think people like the prediction about people learning about this. It seems like mental health really took center stage. Once you went beyond kind of intervention, specifically with the, with the plague. Once you went beyond intervention, like specifically like in a Moderna solving that, then the next area was like, how do we help these people from like isolation and social connection? And I was thinking about even like us starting this podcast, like, which is like, what did I learn? It's like exercise, right? Like exercise,
Yep.
like essential. We saw Michelle Longmire talking about saying, hey, she couldn't do her job if she didn't exercise every day. We talked about
Lee Shapiro. I mean, the consistency again with running and meditation.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we talked about the routine, right? Routine. And then a lot of like, I had a lot of the questions. If you think about even the people that we know and we're connected with, is like, it's connection. Actually, in your podcast, I was listening to your podcast with Dan, that you just did, right? And you talked about how like you can't connect with someone in person, but you can kind of connect with them mentally.
Yes.
That is that you.
Yeah.
I don't tell me what you're thinking.
I think it's I think the virtual connection, the serendipity connections, they can still exist, right? And sometimes like I honestly like where my head was, there are some people and routines, they're individuals that I'll text them like, are you okay? Because mentally I'm kind of like, okay, I haven't heard from that person. Are they okay? And I think that's probably one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most important things to remember is that don't hesitate to reach out. Like, I think we all love to hear from other people, generally, right? And if you're in a rut, then it's a pick me up, right? I think some people are kind of like, well, this person hasn't reached out to me. So what? Just do it, right? Like, just check in with people, even if it's
Right.
random. It's so I think that's
Right.
where I was heading a little bit with that. But
Yeah, but you're right though. You're kind of like, what happens when you're physically with someone in person? It's like, you're having a cup of coffee at the same time, you're in the same room, the topic's the same. So you're combined and you start to really connect with them and you're kind of in a conversational flow.
Yep.
And then you can achieve it virtually. It's harder,
Yeah,
but you can achieve it.
No,
Right?
it is. It's much harder, especially,
Right.
like I'm gonna keep saying this. I'm a hugger. Like I just miss hugs. Like I'm sorry. Like I just do. But
Right.
anyway, say it again.
Is the hug back in 2021?
I hope so, along with a smile. I really, really do. I still my girls, like, everybody's home, right? Which is, that's actually the silver lining. I mean, my teenage girls, I know where they are all the time, which is great.
Right.
What else? I actually wanted to hit for one other topic because while we have not hit Joe Rogan status, we are like 165 subscribers. We just hit our 1500th, so 1,500 download of podcast, and that excludes the stats from Spotify, which I think is a few hundred more. And Jim Joyce, people listen to us combined almost 500 hours, dude. Like, I don't know if I could do that. To listen to us. So thank you, audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Our subscribers,
followers, fact checkers. Shout out to my Garrow, consistent.
Oh yeah, reaching out and checking.
Yeah. Lisa just fact checked us on Japanese whiskey, right? So.
Oh, was he the fact checker on Japanese whiskey?
No, that was Lisa. But
that was Lisa.
He's sent a couple of things, which was great.
Like, no, that's great. In fact, I got to reach out to Mike and see how he's doing. Come back to your thing. I see him quite. I would go for coffees with him in Dublin quite a bit. Yeah, and no, listen, I think we probably pushed up our limit here of people's capacity to listen to us today.
No, dude, I think we should make this the longest episode of the year. Just like let's have another drink, okay?
Keep going. Let's keep rallying it. We have to cover like so what was the fun, like, actually, so I made my list here of mental health, like coping with the pandemic list here. Oh, sorry. Get the list, kind of not doing well there.
We need to rethink that for 2021.
Right. I think it was good. It kept us in check.
It was good. We needed it. We absolutely needed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Too easy, to sit there and listen to someone for 20 minutes whine. How their life is going to shit.
Oh man.
But
so what was the list? Yeah. Let's see.
No, so this is my list, and I said some of these already, so I don't want to repeat. But okay, exercise, routine, connection, and then intervention. So I think you've covered that, reaching out to someone. Yeah. And then the last part is like a bit of like comedy, right? Like fun, right? Like, so I think if you think about our combined styles, we share a lot of those themes, but it's like, consistent exercise, a consistent routine, maintaining these connections, intervention, like accepting it's okay for someone to say, hey, Eugene, let's do a podcast, or you saying, hey, Jim, 7 o'clock, get on this, get on the show.
So we're going to call this the shot of digital health therapy recipe for mental health episode.
Yeah. For surviving, for
surviving COVID-19. Turn everything upside down. That's what you just did.
It's like lots of comedy, intervene, constantly. And I thought I think this act of generosity, like in actually, I know we just had Michelle was last week, and she talked about how sometimes the companies don't help each other enough, right? Like they don't reach out to help. My experience is I find people are quite generous.
I think so too.
But it's kind of one of those things, like you can never do enough, right? Like like when have you done something really generous for someone in this space and felt like it was a waste of time? Like when have you ever done that and felt like it was a waste of time?
Honestly, never.
Right. Right.
I mean,
And the chance of you
whatever
getting
those individuals or companies take out of it, that's a whole different discussion, right? But
right.
yeah,
Just acting generous, giving someone a chance, someone at whatever kind of levels and experience and position or wherever. And and I come back like in my company's website, I make everyone put a quote. Like I put everyone's face, every
that's
Health
awesome.
Beacon
Yeah.
employee has their face and they have a quote, whatever inspirational quote.
What's your quote?
From Ratatouille. And it's
I'm going to website.
So it's about, it's the famous Ratatouille line where, Ego Anton, the critic, says that generally, in life, the critic takes a position above others and judges them without any consequence to themselves. But at some stage, the critic ultimately compliments the new and realizes that the new needs friends, right? And yeah, so it's just kind of that. I remember listening to that, and obviously it's brilliantly written, but it's this idea that new things need friends. They need people that believe in them, that kind of compliment them. That's my quote.
Love it, and it's very startup friendly quote as well. So
deep on a Wednesday night.
Deep. So I think it is officially the longest episode we've ever had. We've accomplished that. We've beat out with all the other guests. So congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
I've again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and the top of my brain for dragging me into this. So
yeah, no, awesome.
And virtual hugs, man. Virtual hugs.
Virtual hugs. I'm looking forward to the Digital Therapeutics podcast. I think that's going to be a great one.
Hopefully then looking forward to kicking this back up next week.
Yeah. Next week. I feel like I was kind of like a sparring dummy, like you were kind of getting your podcast groove on. It was like, I'm in the ring.
I wouldn't trade a moment of this. We're still going on. So for those listeners and followers, and just hit that subscribe button and pass on the goodwill and pass on the mental health recipe by Jim Joyce. I love it.
Excellent. Awesome, man.
Right. Oh, and the shot.health is now live, redirecting to our YouTube show. That's it.
The shot.health.
The shot.health. All right.
Yeah, that's a better name. The hashtag shot. The shot.
The shot. That was Steve Seuntjens', I think, idea. So
yeah, that was Steve Seuntjens. Give him a call out.
Dude, happy New Year and healthy one, and we'll talk 2021.
Happy New Year, man.
Cheers.